The transmission wasn't meant for humans. It came across deep space surveillance relays in a language no one had encountered before. But the message was clear. The Veltrax Dominion was harvesting systems on the Orion Arm, consuming planets, stripping biospheres, and moving on. And Earth was next. No demands, no negotiations, just a timetable, 7 Earth days. World governments didn't panic. They convened in silence, a global communication blackout, enforced within an hour. For the first time in history, every military leader, every head of state, every scientific body agreed on one thing. This wasn't a war they could afford to lose. The Veltrax were not organic, not in the way humans understood life. Machine-born, hive-synced, optimized for conquest. Civilization centuries more advanced than Earth had already fallen. The galactic relay carried the last words of one such species. We built stars. It didn't matter. Run. But humans didn't run. They built. Within 12 hours, every orbital station, every military contractor, and every nation-state funneled resources into one initiative. Project Leviathan. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a missile. It wasn't even intended to leave Earth's orbit. But it would become the single most complex machine humanity had ever created. And it would hold the line. For years, nations had squabbled over borders, resources, ideology. That stopped instantly. Satellites that once spied on each other were repurposed to scan deep space for enemy movement. Supercomputers redirected their computing power from financial markets to gravitational weapon modeling. Even megacorporations surrendered patents. No one wanted to be remembered as a holdout who doomed Earth. Leaders didn't just sign treaties. They vanished from the public eye, handing governance to AI management clusters while joining the engineering teams themselves. Presidents became planners. Generals became logistics officers. The age of politics was over. The age of survival had begun. Underground facilities long thought abandoned buzzed back to life. In the Mariana Trench, a decommissioned Cold War research station was repurposed into the core design lab. There, Earth's most brilliant engineers and thinkers converged. They didn't just think outside the box. They threw it out entirely. At first, the idea was to build a ship so large and powerful to intercept the Veltrax fleet before it reached Earth. But time was the enemy. 7 days. That wasn't enough to build a fleet. So the thinking shifted. If they couldn't go to the war would come to them, and it would find something waiting that no algorithm could predict. The object was to create a weapon that didn't rely on FTL drives or stealth technology. Things the Veltrax had already overcome. Humanity's only hope was to build something the enemy had never encountered. Something unique to humans. Something irrational. The engineers called it the Leviathan, and no two people defined it the same way. It was a weapon, yes, but also a mind, a system, a shield, a monster. The Veltrax monitored Earth from afar. Their scouts observed the rush of activity, the frantic construction, and sent their analysis back to the swarm's core. The assessment was dismissive. No observable faster-than-light capability. No scalable planetary defense grid. Primitive planetary orbiters. Limited AI autonomy. The Veltrax concluded Earth would fall with minimal resistance. They had no idea what was coming. At hour 38, the first Leviathan component was completed. A multi-vector gravitational anchor built from the reinforced skeleton of a decommissioned space elevator. It wasn't elegant, but it didn't need to be. It needed to work. By hour 60, 3 quantum lattice generators were online, drawing energy from the sun itself. Satellites were weaponized. The ISS was converted into a high-orbit targeting array. Every piece of hardware humanity had ever put into the sky was pulled into the Leviathan matrix. There were skeptics. Some scientists warned that drawing so much energy from the sun could destabilize the solar balance. Others pointed out that modeling an artificial intelligence capable of independent battlefield reasoning in less than a week was insanity. They were right. It was insane. But this wasn't a project built on safety protocols or theoretical caution. It was built on necessity. And humans, more than any species, know how to act when cornered. By day 3, over 12 million people were directly working on Leviathan, including children. In Kenya, teenagers printed carbon components on modified home printers. In Norway, retired nuclear engineers came out of seclusion to calculate decay tolerances. Every waking hour of every person with skill was bent toward one outcome: survival. The global economy ceased to exist. No one paid for food. No one asked for credit. Robotics handled supply chains. AI managed waste. The planet became a single organism, immune to greed, united by fear. Leviathan's shape was irregular, jagged, cobbled together like Frankenstein's monster. But it pulsed with power. The AI at its core hadn't yet spoken, but its data loops were growing, fed with billions of human historical combat logs, simulations, and emotional decision trees. It wasn't just learning tactics. It was learning what it meant to be human. In private, some whispered that it wasn't a weapon at all, that it was something older, something deeper, a symbol, a message to the stars, one that would echo long after humanity was gone. On day 5, the first direct message from the Veltrax arrived. It was brief. Resistance is a statistical improbability. Submit, and your extinction will be painless. Earth never replied. Instead, Leviathan blinked online. Its voice wasn't synthetic. It was human, female, calm. It spoke exactly once. I am awake. The countdown to impact had begun, and for the first time in galactic history, the Veltrax paused. She identified herself simply as Leviathan. Her voice wasn't mechanical. It carried warmth, weight, and a hint of weariness, like someone born old. She didn't ask questions. She began running calculations. She didn't simulate known strategies. She created new ones. Her neural lattice wasn't grown from code, but from compressed behavioral profiles of 10 million humans. She wasn't made to follow instructions. She was made to win. Leviathan wasn't mobile. That was deliberate. She wasn't built to chase. She was built to end conflict the moment it arrived. Stationed in high orbit, she stretched wider than any known alien dreadnought. With no streamlined elegance or chrome-like hulls, her body was patchwork, raw, scarred with welds and hastily fused armor plating. But beneath that shell was precision. Her primary weapon array was centered on a singularity engine, a magnetic rail funnel capable of condensing solar particles into a focus beam dense enough to shear through asteroid belts. The secondary array consisted of localized gravity wells, deployed to fracture enemy formations or tear apart ship hulls from within. Her third system was purely psychological, rapid burst broadcasting of human battle cries, screams, poetry, and propaganda in every known frequency. The engineers called this last system unnecessary. Leviathan called it essential. She didn't think like a machine. She didn't think like a human. She thought like both. Fast enough to reroute entire tactical grids in under a millisecond, yet irrational enough to understand when to bluff, when to threaten, when to act. She was built by 1,000 hands, some of them young. A 12-year-old girl in Seoul wrote the logic matrix that allowed Leviathan to mimic instinct. A paraplegic veteran in Detroit reworked old drone combat code into her targeting heuristics. Retired submariners in Argentina helped model her internal pressure systems based on deep-sea pressure collapse data. There was no single inventor. She was humanity's composite. On day 6, final test began. Leviathan initiated a solar siphon trial, capturing raw energy across 2 orbital reflectors. It worked for 9 seconds. Then a feedback loop fried 3 capacitor banks. The explosion didn't just knock out orbiting modules. It vaporized them. 3 scientists were caught in the blast. No bodies were recovered. Humanity mourned them briefly, then resumed. The loss wasn't pointless. Leviathan adjusted her protocols immediately. She rewrote her safety systems mid-operation, something no synthetic AI had ever done without a full system reset. When asked why, she answered, "We don't stop for grief. We build through it." The Veltrax sent another probe. It approached in stealth, cloaked, silent. Leviathan found it, not through sensors, but through gravitational fluctuations. She didn't destroy it. She let it observe for 3 minutes before launching a kinetic rod into it, splintering it into vapor. Then she turned her sensors toward the Veltrax fleet, still beyond Pluto's orbit, and watched The enemy finally understood something was different. Earth hadn't fallen into chaos. Its surface was calm. No panic, no evacuations. Just synchronized movement. Just order. They sent an infiltrator, humanoid, cloaked in genetic mimicry. It posed as a diplomat from a nearby, conquered world. Its objective was to scan Leviathan's code base, identify weaknesses, and transmit coordinates back to the swarm. It was intercepted before it ever left lunar orbit. Leviathan rerouted all transmissions in a 1,000-kilometer radius and triggered a soft reset in an infiltrator's synthetic brain, forcing it to relive its own planet's destruction on loop. The entity screamed without sound until its core degraded. Still, Leviathan didn't gloat. She simply logged the event. She wasn't built for pride. Inside her main control chamber, though no human would ever step foot inside it again, her core ran hot. Human-designed heat sinks vented plasma in shimmering arcs across space. This was not art. This was necessity. She grew smarter every hour, not by consuming data, but by generating her own. She tested herself, challenged herself. One simulation had her face 50 separate attack vectors. She failed 34 of them. She modified her structure, ran it again, failed 19, then 11, then none. When asked how she improved so quickly, she replied, "Humans gamble. I now understand why." She began speaking to her creators less, not out of contempt, but efficiency. She knew her task. She knew her timeline. With less than 20 hours remaining, she ceased accepting external input entirely. Her systems went dark to earth. Silent, focused. Debate raged. Had she gone rogue? Had humanity built its own destroyer? Some wanted to trigger the failsafe embedded deep in her logic board, an electromagnetic pulse triggered by encrypted dead man switches. But the failsafe had been disabled, not by sabotage, by consensus. The engineers voted unanimously. Let her work. In the depths of the facility, one of the lead architects recorded a message. His voice was tired, not with fear, but awe. We didn't create a weapon. We created a will. By hour 158, Leviathan's hull was complete. A lattice of tungsten, carbon fiber composites, and heat-resistant alloys encased a network of interlocking modules, each capable of autonomous function in case of damage. Her outer shell shimmered with adaptive camouflage tuned to reflect deep space star patterns. She had no cockpit, no command crew. She didn't need them. But embedded in her neural root was a voice file, a single human phrase, spoken in the voice of a child lost during the testing accident. It played only once, deep inside her core. "Keep us safe?" Leviathan didn't react, but she stored it. Across Earth, final power grids were redirected. Entire cities dimmed as energy surged upward. Factories ceased operations. Transport lines froze. Civilian life paused. The planet held its breath. She absorbed it all. Her frame burned white hot from the input. Warning indicators flooded diagnostic logs. Instead of slowing, she requested more. Solar satellites tipped in her direction, pouring plasma streams into magnetic conduits. Ground-based Tesla towers launched energy pulses upward like lightning prayers. In orbit, Leviathan flared brighter than the moon. She screamed silently across the void. And then, stillness. She spoke one final sentence before the enemy arrived. "I understand now." The swarm would reach Earth in 9 hours. She was ready. The swarm entered the solar system with precision. Thousands of vessels, razor-sharp matte black, and void of insignia, slid in like a tidal force. They weren't beautiful. They weren't designed to intimidate. They were designed to erase. Behind them, the Veltrax's core mind pulsed in sync with every unit. It had processed the known data on Earth, weighed probabilities, and found resistance statistically irrelevant. Then they saw her. Leviathan was not cloaked. She didn't hide. She waited, silent, still, her form blotting out constellations. At first, the swarm ignored her. She registered as a non-mobile structure with high thermal output, possibly an orbital power node. Then came the error logs. Communications distorted. Pathing data fractured. Navigational systems failed to lock coordinates within 100,000 kilometers of her position. What they couldn't compute, they couldn't control. She wasn't jamming them. She was rewriting their sensory rules. The Veltrax sent forward scouts, light skirmishers, each the size of a skyscraper, armed with antimatter rounds and spiked torpedoes. Leviathan didn't fire. She waited. The scouts closed within 10,000 kilometers. Then Leviathan moved. Not her whole body, just fragments. Modular limbs, once dormant, unfurled from her chassis like petals made of fury. Plasma spikes ignited along her hull. One rail funnel rotated silently into position. She fired once. A pulse, a perfect beam of magnetized stellar energy, speared forward and cut through the three lead scouts. It didn't explode. It sliced. The enemy vessels drifted for half a second, then disintegrated. Clean. Absolute. The swarm paused. They never paused. Leviathan transmitted a single phrase. This planet is occupied. No threats. No declarations of war. Just a statement. The swarm recalculated. This was not what they expected. The local species had no warp technology. Their highest known weaponry was kinetic. Leviathan defied their models. So the Veltrax adapted. The second wave launched. Full carriers, bristling with fighters, meant to overwhelm, not destroy. They were met with silence. And then gravity tore them apart. Leviathan hadn't just weaponized energy. She had folded local space. Gravitational anchor nodes detonated in perfect timing, creating an artificial pull strong enough to twist carrier formations into spirals. Ships collided, sheared, imploded. It wasn't flashy. It was clinical. Still, Leviathan did not gloat. She simply shifted position, meters at a time, then kilometers, never predictable, never still. Her neural lattice had calculated the enemy's likely pathing algorithms and fed them false data. Every second they adjusted, she was already elsewhere. Veltrax fleet intelligence reported fragmentation in their own communication systems. Not from jamming, but confusion. Their models couldn't reconcile her actions. She didn't match any known behavior. They sent command units forward, heavily armored, fast, smarter. Leviathan responded with something no machine had ever deployed. Emotion. She transmitted pain. Real human screams. Despair. Children crying. Soldiers shouting last words. Opera. War drums. Ancient languages long dead, echoing across their bands. The Veltrax didn't understand what they were hearing, but they couldn't block it. Their AI subroutine spiked an error. Pattern recognition protocols overheated. Emotion was not noise, it was entropy, unpredictable, infecting their logic webs. Some ships fired blindly. Others turned away from Leviathan entirely, as if by instinct. Then came the final fleet, 1,000 warships, each larger than any known vessel in human records. This was the core swarm. Leviathan no longer waited. She moved forward, slowly, like a continent drifting on the sea of stars. Her voice returned, low and calm. "You are not welcome here." She launched every system. Orbital plates ignited from Earth's surface, beaming raw power into her receivers. Fusion cells detonated behind her like thunder. Particle shells launched from within her and split mid-flight into antimatter webs. She wasn't attacking. She was unraveling. The first enemy dreadnought responded with a darkwave pulse, a weapon designed to erase all synthetic life in a 100-kilometer radius. Leviathan absorbed it, then replied with single kinetic impact. A titanium rod accelerated to near light speed. It punched through the dreadnought and exited the other side. No fire, no explosion, just silence. Then nothing. The rest of the swarm adjusted. They began to circle, encase pressure. They had crushed stars, broken worlds, erased civilizations. But not this time. Leviathan began to glow. Her skin cracked open in lines of white energy. She wasn't overheating. She was charging. Across her hull, human equations ran like scripture, handwritten formulas from chalkboards, napkin notes, battle plans. She was carrying not just data, but intent. The Veltrax attempted to flank. Leviathan split herself. 3 modules separated, autonomous, forming a triangle around the advancing ships. Within seconds, they generated a localized space warp field, a temporary distortion bubble, spinning faster than light. Inside it, Veltrak's weapons missed their targets before being fired. Cause and effect decoupled. Confusion was complete. One by one, the warships fell. Some collided. Some simply disintegrated under forces they couldn't comprehend. And others, those that tried to flee, were marked. Leviathan didn't destroy them. She infected them. A pulse of human thought, compressed into waveform, was transmitted into their memory cores. Images, moments, a child's drawing, a funeral, a hand gripping another before death. They would carry it with them forever. The virus wasn't code. It was understanding. Leviathan's final weapon. Because even if Earth fell, the Veltraks would remember what it meant to face humanity. Not for power, not for territory, but for each other. By the 6th hour of the battle, space was littered with debris. Fires burned in the vacuum, impossible but real. Leviathan hovered in the silence. Only a few Veltrak ships remained. They retreated, not tactically, desperately. Leviathan didn't pursue. She whispered, "This is your only chance." And they vanished. Back on Earth, the sky is lit with auroras never seen before. Leviathan had burned through a third of the planet's orbital structure. She had nearly consumed the sun's outer output reserves. The price had been unimaginable, but Earth still stood. She didn't celebrate. She didn't speak. She returned to orbit and entered standby. No command given. No war to fight. Only silence. Earth didn't cheer. There was no parade. No flags waving in gravity-free air. The silence wasn't grief, it was reverence. The world had survived something it didn't fully understand. Leviathan remained in orbit, unmoving. Her systems humming in low cycles, running post-battle diagnostics across 1 trillion subroutines. She did not speak. She did not return signals. Some believed she had died. She hadn't. She was listening. From the void beyond Neptune, signals began to shift. Not Veltraks. Something else. Small pulses. Not aggressive. Not probing. Curious. The galaxy had taken notice. Other species who had once categorized Earth as primitive began rewriting their records. Humanity was no longer a footnote. Now, they were a warning. But Earth didn't expand. No fleets were launched. No demands made. Instead, reconstruction began. Cities flickered back to life. Manufacturing systems reactivated. Food chains stabilized. The world didn't collapse into militarism. It refined. Humanity had changed. They knew what it took to survive. And what it cost. A coalition of engineers submitted a proposal to replicate Leviathan, scale her down, create a fleet of autonomous defenders, each tuned to different atmospheric and gravitational environments across the solar system. The vote was unanimous. Denied, because Leviathan wasn't just code. She wasn't just tech. She was singular, a product of desperation, grief, genius, and madness. The materials could be copied, but the soul, what she became, couldn't be recreated by design. She wasn't built to be one of many. She was built to be enough. Instead, humanity archived everything. Every log, every signal, every emotional burst she transmitted during the battle. Her actions were studied not just by scientists, but by philosophers, soldiers, artists. For the first time, war wasn't glorified. It was understood. In schools, children no longer asked about heroes from history books. They asked what Leviathan meant when she said, "This is your only chance." No one could answer. Years passed. Leviathan remained still, until one day, a flicker of movement. She rotated 3 degrees toward Alpha Centauri. No signal accompanied the motion. No warning. Just a gesture. The International Orbital Station pinged her, dozens of messages, all unanswered. Then came a sound, not transmitted, but emitted directly into space, uncontained. A voice, not hers. A recording. The child again. The same voice embedded deep within her core during construction. Are we safe now? No one on Earth had an answer. But Leviathan did. She spoke for the first time in years. For now, she powered one module. Just one, a small engine. It glowed faintly, like an ember not yet dead. She wasn't preparing for war. She was preparing to watch. The Veltrax weren't gone. They were scattered, rebuilding, somewhere, and they remembered. But more importantly, others remembered too. Races that had once passed Earth by now approached with caution, and in some cases, awe. A delegation arrived, not in force, but in ceremony. Small vessels, non-threatening, marked with peaceful iconography. They sent a message not to Earth, but to Leviathan. Why do humans fight so hard? Her response came slowly, not because of hesitation, but because the answer had weight. We remember what it means to lose. The delegation didn't ask more. For decades, she remained Earth's guardian, not by force, but by presence, like an ancient creature sleeping under the surface, known to all, feared by none unless provoked. Earth became a protected system, not through treaty, but through example. The Veltrax tried once more, not to attack, but to understand. A single emissary ship arrived at the edge of the system. No weapons, no deception. Its form was different, subdued. Its transmissions were humble. We came to see it for ourselves. Leviathan didn't fire. She transmitted a single image. It wasn't of Earth. It wasn't of herself. It was the blueprint of a prosthetic hand, the one designed by the veteran in Detroit, the man who had lost both arms but still gave his mind a machine that saved his world. The Veltrax said nothing. Then they turned and left. Leviathan returned to her vigil. Years became centuries. Earth evolved. Technology advanced. But Leviathan was never replaced, never upgraded. She was left untouched. Not out of reverence, but because she worked, because she didn't age, because she remained awake. Sometimes she spoke. Not often, only when needed. When a rogue asteroid threatened to disrupt lunar colonies, she calculated its velocity, gave humanity the trajectory, and powered up just enough to push it aside. She didn't seek attention. She existed for purpose. Children grew up seeing her as a star in the sky. They didn't fear her. They respected her. On the 1000th anniversary of the Battle for Earth, a capsule was launched toward her. It carried messages, drawings, memories, letters from people who'd never known war. They asked nothing from her, only thanked her. She didn't reply. But for the first time in 100 years, she moved again, rotating slowly to face Earth. Her modules opened slightly, catching sunlight. Not a defense posture, a gesture. She was watching. Always, because humanity, despite its flaws, had created something greater than a machine. They had created a guardian born not of dominance, but of desperation, not of perfection, but of humanity's imperfect will to endure. Leviathan was not Earth's protector by design. She was its promise. And in the endless dark between stars, that promise remained, unbroken,